Hi, I'm a psychologist with over 30 years of experience working with families, couples, and individuals going through intense emotional struggles. I read your post, and I have to be brutally honest with you. You were wrong in what you did. Your decision to force your wife to tell your daughter about the affair wasn't about transparency or accountability. It was about control, punishment, and a desire to make your wife feel the same shame and hurt you felt. And while that might have brought you some temporary sense of vindication, the real cost here wasn't to your wife, but to your daughter. Let me explain why. First, your daughter is 15 years old. She's at an age where she's beginning to form her own beliefs about relationships, love, and trust. By forcing this confession on her, you've irrevocably changed the way she views not just her mother, but the world around her. In her eyes, the two people she loves most, her parents, are now in a broken marriage, and she's been forced to witness the cracks firsthand. You didn't just let her in on a marital problem. You pulled her into the mess of adult betrayal, something she had no place being a part of. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should have hidden the truth from her forever. But your need for her to know, to see her mother's failings, wasn't about teaching her a lesson in honesty. It was about getting her to side with you, consciously or unconsciously. You were hurt, deeply so, and you wanted your daughter to feel that hurt, to be as disappointed in your wife as you were. Whether you realize it or not, this was a form of emotional manipulation. You wanted your wife to face consequences, not just from you, but from your daughter too. Here's the thing. Children should not be burdened with their parents' mistakes. You may feel like your wife owed it to your daughter to be truthful, but that wasn't your call to make. Your daughter didn't need to be part of this painful adult situation. She didn't need to be dragged into the emotional fallout between you and your wife. What she needed was a home where, despite the pain between her parents, she could still feel secure. Now that's gone. She may never fully trust her mother again, but she may also struggle to trust you, because you made the decision to expose her to something she wasn't ready to process. And think about this. You fundamentally changed the relationship your wife has with your daughter. Yes, you said there's been no screaming or tears, but you admit there's now a quiet distance between them. That distance, that's a wound you've created. Even if your wife was willing to tell the truth, the damage has been done. Your daughter now sees her mother through a different lens, one of betrayal, dishonesty, and guilt. She won't look at her mother the same way again, and whether you realize it or not, that's a permanent shift. You said your daughter is quieter now, more reserved. That's not a good sign. It's not a sign of maturity or resilience. It's a sign that she's internalizing what happened and that she's likely grappling with a new understanding of her world, one where trust can be shattered by the people she loves most. Do you realize what that does to a young girl? You've essentially given her a front row seat to emotional devastation, and for what? To prove a point? The truth is, this wasn't about protecting your daughter from lies. It was about you seeking validation for your pain. You wanted someone else to see your wife the way you saw her in that moment, as someone who betrayed you. But your daughter isn't your emotional ally. She's not there to help you shoulder the weight of this betrayal. She's a kid, and her relationship with her mom should never have been put at risk because of your need for revenge. Here's another thing you may not have considered. What happens next? Your wife told the truth, but the relationship between mother and daughter is damaged, and that's on you. It's also not going to help the trust issues between you and your wife. You've forced her into a corner, making her confess her deepest failure in front of her child. That wasn't a test of her character, that was you punishing her. And now, both your wife and your daughter are left trying to pick up the pieces of a bond that you fractured. Let's talk about your daughter for a moment longer. You should be protecting her from the harshness of the adult world, not inviting her into it. Yes, eventually kids grow up and learn that life is messy, that people make mistakes. But at 15, she's not ready for that level of betrayal. She looks up to both of you. She's learning how relationships work by watching you and your wife. What you've taught her here is that marriage can be a battlefield, where betrayals are aired out and emotional wounds are left to fester. It's important for you to take responsibility for the fact that you didn't think about your daughter's well-being in this decision. You thought about your own. You wanted someone else to bear witness to your wife's failure, and that someone was your daughter. And now, you're seeing the consequences, a relationship that's changed and a daughter who may carry this burden with her for the rest of her life. You asked if you were too harsh. You were. You asked if you were right to make sure everything was out in the open. You weren't. Transparency between you and your wife is important, but dragging your daughter into this was not about transparency. It was about control, punishment, and, frankly, cruelty. I'm telling you this not to hurt you, but to help you understand the gravity of what you've done. It's not too late to try to repair things, but you need to acknowledge the real reason you forced this confession. And you need to work on rebuilding the trust, not just between you and your wife, but between your daughter and her mother. You owe it to your daughter to help her heal from this, even if it means admitting that you made a mistake. Because in the end, the person you should have been protecting the most was her. I know this is hard to hear, but you did post on Reddit asking for opinions or further validation that you did the right thing. And I felt obligated to reply and share my years of experience in these matters with you, no matter how hard my opinion was to hear. You were the asshole for dragging your daughter into a situation as a way to validate your feelings. You are the asshole. Now, what are you going to do about it? That's the question.